Hey guys, welcome back. It is your favorite Gimp with a Limp, and I'm here with a review for the Battle of Kursk, which is an expansion that has just been added to Valor and Victory. Valor and Victory, if you haven't seen my previous video, go ahead and check that one out. But it is a hex encounter war game, so very, very similar to the hex encounter board games that we play, but taken into digital format. It handles everything, right? So the dice rolls and keeping track of movement points and ranges and modifiers, all that good stuff that drives us nuts when we're trying to play the game on the tabletop. Now the computer is taking care of it. So it does help with cleanup in the fact that you don't have to worry about folding up your maps or putting away counters when you're done with a game. You can quickly just jump right into another one. So I did cover the previous version. I talked about it, did a scenario where I played through the whole scenario. And here I'm going to have a scenario that I played up in the background so you can see some of the game footage itself. So Valor and Victory does have a fair amount of expansions already available for it. The new Kursk one is available at $10 or $9.99. And you can get the base game for $19.99. So you can pretty much expand upon it as much as you like. And what this adds to the game is another 10 scenarios, and each one of those are adding 10 more maps to it, which gives players the option for like player created, user created, the mod type maps. It gives more options and variety for that, but it's also adding new units to the game, which of course are going to be tank heavy since it is focused in Kursk. So I love that. I loved having all the tanks and the armor rolls and having that go on in the game. I did find that a lot of scenarios are having German tanks, tank heavy groups fighting the Soviets, and the Soviets tended to have more AT guns versus tanks. So when we're playing this, the Kursk scenarios, more often than not, you're going to be seeing maneuver warfare from the Germans, whereas the Soviets are more entrenched, right? They're more back on the back foot and fighting defensively, trying to hold the positions off against that German advance. Cool part though is, like in the previous scenarios, previous gameplays, you can play it from both sides. So you do have the option to play it as either the Axis or the Allies, and you can have extra rules added to it like fog of war, so you don't see the enemy units until you actually have line of sight to them. But if that's too difficult for you, you do have the option to cut that off. And I do like the fact that it gives you the option to adjust your dice rolls. One of the things when I played Valor and Victory previously is that I found that sometimes it just felt like the dice gods were against me. Now that's going to happen. Anyone who's played a dice game knows that sometimes you're just rolling bad. It's just not going to work for you. You can have a little bit of a swing in that though. You can leave it neutral where it's just going to be straight randomized rolls, or you can put an advantage to either the player or the AI. There are a couple of levels of advantage that you can choose from, either a slight advantage or a strong advantage. So if you want to give yourself a bonus, if you're newer to war games, you do have the option to have the game be a little bit more forgiving for you and have that little bit of advantage. So the dice are going to lean your way a little more often than not, but that doesn't mean that you can just play willy-nilly. You'll still get pounded if you make bad choices. I have found from my own personal playing, because I've played through a bunch of the scenarios so far, that it does feel like the dice at the neutral level favor the AI just a little bit. Now, again, it could be the dice gods. They could just be working against me. And there were some scenarios where I was certain I was going to ruffle stomp it, and I just got all my tanks just blown right off the board. So if you are newer to the game, I would recommend going with just that first level of player advantage, just to give yourself that little bit of a buffer as you get used to it. And then once you do have your feet underneath you for this style of gameplay, bump it back to the the neutral level, or even start giving the AI the advantage so you can really test your tactical skills when it comes to the game. When it comes to the gameplay itself, it's similar to the hex and counter style gameplay that we have seen previously. All right. You're going to have a selection of units, infantry, leaders, machine guns, rocket launchers, bazookas, and then your armored vehicles with AA weapons, tanks, armored cars, half tracks, all that good stuff is going to be in this. I do like the inclusion of tigers. Tigers are awesome. And of course, they are in the Battle of Kursk, so you will see them in these scenarios. However, Valor and Victory does do something different from some of the other war games that I have played. And this is something that I like and don't like at the same time. But honestly, I find that I like it more than I dislike it. And the only reason I do dislike it is because I'm not used to it. And I end up making mistakes sometimes based on that. But it does make me think more. Now, in regular war games, regular desktop war games, you'll have your phases of the game, right? So your admin phase, command phase, whatever it is, and then you'll move your units, and then you'll fire with your units, and then you might do an assault with your units, and then end phase cleanup. It's not that way in this game. In this game, you'll do your command phase, and then you go to your fire phase. Then it goes to the movement phase, and then it goes to the defensive fire phase. So there's a fire phase in your turn for the enemy. And then after the enemy has had their defensive fire phase, you'll have your assault phase, and then it goes on to the opponent's turn. It throws me off tremendously that I have to shoot before I move my units. In most war games, you move, then fire, not fire, then move. It's just the way most games play. Now, of course, there are other games out there that have you firing before you end up moving. Some of them you'll move, fire, then move again. It just depends on the game. In this one, I have found that it makes me have to think much more tactically about my decisions, and it's less forgiving of those mistakes in the fact that I'm having to make that choice. Am I shooting this turn? Is it more important for me to take that shot now or move my unit and take that shot later on and have to defer it? But the enemy is going to get to shoot at me not once, but twice, potentially, before I get to act with that unit again. That's a big swing. That's a huge thing that happens in this game. That you'll have your fire phase and you have to choose fire or move. Do you want to take that longer shot with the tiger, try to take out their AT gun, or do you think that you'll stand a better chance by moving that tiger forward and hope it's still there on your next turn when you get your chance to fire? But it's not just that, because remember, you do fire on your opponent's turn as well. You get your own defensive fire phase. So you can't just think about what am I doing on my specific turn, my specific phases. You will have that opportunity to fire during the defensive fire phase when your opponent, the AI or real person, if you're playing real person, are having their activation. And I just found that that makes me think so much more tactically about the choices that I'm making. What's more important to me, that the few hexes of movement that I'm getting, or getting that shot off now? Which is the most important aspect for me right now? And what's going to be more beneficial to my units later on? It really does kind of force you to think those few moves ahead versus playing it kind of like seat of your pants, where you're just flinging the units forward and hoping for the best. I found in the scenario that I've actually got playing in the background currently that I did have to think about those choices, especially with my tanks, because my tanks were going along the southern portion of that map, and I was taking my infantry along the northern portion, and my goal was to try to flank the enemy from both sides, but I really needed to take out their AT guns. And multiple times I had to make the choice of what unit am I really going to sacrifice, because I know the AI is going to get a few shots on me. So a couple of times I would actually take some of my weaker tanks and put them out as almost sacrificial offerings of shoot this tank, not this tank. Unfortunately, there was one incident where they did target my tiger, and they took out one of the two tigers that I had when I had it in the back, farther away, and the AI just lobbed in a shell, and they got lucky, and they long bombed it. I was like, no, but it's those moments that really do kind of stick with you when you're playing the game. So that's an aspect of the game that I really do like. However, I do have to mention this, and it's something I mentioned in my original review of the game, which is the misclicks. This game is sorely in need of an undo button, something along those lines, or maybe adjusting the way that the clicks are done, and it's when it comes to movement. Because constantly in this, I would accidentally move a unit I didn't mean to, and that's because it's not just purely left clicking to select a unit. You can accidentally move a unit onto a hex when you're really meaning to select the units that are in that hex. I think that they should change it to where it's just left click to select units, right click to unselect units, and if you left click on a hex that has a unit, maybe an option pops up or something along those lines, something to differentiate. Are you trying to select this unit, or are you trying to move these units with that unit? It causes a few issues. The easiest solution by far that wouldn't require much reprogramming, I believe, would just be to have that undo button. That way, you would be able to take back those misclicks. And I'm not looking to take back things that are gameplay related. So if I get new information, right? So an enemy is exposed by the fog of war, or they've taken opportunity fire at the unit, I can't undo that. Don't give me an undo for that, because obviously that's new information that I didn't have previously, that the enemy is going to shoot there, or that they were over there, whatever the case is. If something like that in the game happens, obviously don't allow the unit to be undone. But if that doesn't happen, give me the chance to remove my misclicks, because sometimes that happens, and I actually had that happen in the scenario you're watching in the background. At least twice, if not 3 times, I accidentally moved. No, actually, I think it was 4 times, because I think I did it twice with a couple of different tanks, and I know I did it with infantry at least twice. So there's 3 to 4 times I moved units in ways that I didn't really mean to move them, because it was a little confusing on what you needed to click where and how and when to get certain movements going in certain directions. Overall, it's a really minor complaint. Not having the undo button is not the end of the world. It doesn't horribly negatively affect the game, but there are occasions where it can drive you nuts if you didn't mean to accidentally move that tank out into the open, or you move the infantry into the clear and then they get shot to pieces and you're like, damn, I really didn't mean to do that. I accidentally did it. I wish I could undo it, but now you're stuck with it. So is Kursk worth getting? Yes, it's definitely worth getting. Again, I do my correlation, my thought process on whether or not the cost is worth the price for the game based on like a math formula. For me, it's for every dollar I spend, I want to get at least an hour of gameplay out of it. For this, it has 10 scenarios being added to it, bare minimum, barring anything else, right? So just the base expansion itself. And that's easily going to take at least an hour per scenario, if not more. And then if you get into the fact that you can play it from the other side, then you're easily getting multiple hours per scenario out of the gameplay, out of the expansion. So yeah, you're fine. Cost benefit wise, perfectly reasonable. And if you can find it on sale, more power to you. It's just more beneficial at that point as far as dollars to hours on what you're getting for the expansion. Now, the game can get a little costly when you start adding in all the expansions to it. So if you got 20 for the base game, which is reasonable, and then $10 extra for each one of the expansions. I think one of them's 5. Don't quote me on that, but I know they're around that. So 5 to 10 per expansion. That can start to add up a little bit. So to get the game plus everything that's available for it can run what, 40, 50 bucks. So then it starts to cost a little bit. That might make you pause. But If you do see it on a Steam sale where they're running it 30-40% off, something like that, must buy. Absolutely. If you like Hex Encounter war games, yeah, definitely. You catch this one on sale, jump on it. It's worth it. And finally, you'll notice that I don't say too much about the graphics, and that's because wargamers tend not to be very graphically oriented. We're not those types of gamers that want the latest and greatest when it comes to graphical fidelity, but this looks perfectly serviceable as far as hex counters, everything that you have seen on your tabletop, perfectly equivalent here. So no qualms as far as what the game looks like. And then as far as sound goes, the only niggle that I'll give on it is I find the tanks to be a little loud. You can cut that down, but that's just it. When you're moving your tanks, it can get kind of annoying because the tank engine sound appears to be louder than the rest of it. It might just be that everything else is much shorter in duration. So when you're firing cannon shells or machine guns or whatever, it lasts just a short period of time versus when you're moving your tank, that tank engine sound doesn't stop until you finish the movement with the tank. So if you're moving a whole lot of tanks back to back to back, it can get kind of annoying because it is rather loud. I mean, you just cut down your PC and it takes care of the problem. But other than that, sounds great. No problems. But anyway, that is it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Definitely go check out Valor and Victory, Kursk, and the other expansions. I know they've got Arnhem, Stalingrad, and something else. But Valor and Victory is definitely worth it for those who are into the Hex Encounter war games. And I'll go ahead and throw this in here. You guys stay tuned. I have one secret one that I have just got to cover for you guys that you will be very, very excited about if you are into sci-fi stuff. So stay tuned for something very, very awesome. All right, that's going to be it for me. Y'all take care. Catch you in the next one.